feel when your numbers go up and they hear you. They start following your message cause they feel you. Haters in the rear view wanna ruin plans. Don't be startled, they just low-key fans. They tight like bands on the fresh stack. Knowing Rolo runs the city, bringing hip-hop back for the 51st year with my loquacious bands. Now this ain't no love.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rolo Runs the City podcast. I am your host Rolo, and I am back here for another week to bring some great personal development stuff for you. As always, whenever something flows through the mind, I said let me go ahead and get it out on the mic, so therefore I will do what needs to get done. But with that being said, let's go to the particulars. You guys already know I'm on the socials. You can reach me on X at Rolo Runs the City whenever I get philosophical or anything like that. Or if I'm on Facebook as well, of course, sometimes I'm on there. But you could always hit up at Rolo Runs the City podcast as well as Rolo Runs the City music. And the same thing goes for Instagram. Both of those will definitely hit you. Either run into the podcast or the music. Feel free to listen to both. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this episode. And don't forget, I'm sorry, I also forgot, don't forget about RoloRunsTheCity.com. Anything Rolo is on there. But without further ado, let's get into the show. Knowing your audience and stop preaching to the choir. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up was because, of course, I am putting out a podcast, but I also listen to podcasts as well. And one thing that I know in particular is I listen to a lot of, personal development stuff, business, things of that nature, just to kind of get a wide range of what's going on in the world outside of Rolo. So therefore, I said, man, I really need to go ahead and put out a podcast on knowing your audience because you're preaching to the choir. And you need to stop preaching to the choir, pretty much, So I said, let me go ahead and put this thing together. So I decided to go ahead and put this podcast together specifically because I've noticed a lot of older entrepreneurs, a lot of older content creators, they're busy out there trying to, basically get after the 20-somethings who don't want to hear what you're saying. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I really don't. I know that sounds pretty harsh. Like, you're trying to help out the younger generation, but the generation doesn't want to hear you. And the reason why I was saying that was because I know there's a lot of younger people who they have more access to things in reference to like technology, better ways to getting, access to currency other than selling their time like a lot of folks do for a 9-to-5, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? You're exchanging your service, and with that exchange, you're making your money. There's nothing wrong with how you do that, whether if it's selling your time or selling a product, whatever it is. But I've noticed with many people, they're going to walk their path. And with them walking their path, it's their test in order to give their testimony. And you have to allow people to do that. And I've noticed a lot of older entrepreneurs, a lot of older content creators are giving the story of, man, if I would have heard this, if I would have heard that when I was younger, and right now you're trying to speak to a base that's really not trying to hear it. So that is what it is. But, knowing your audience, it matters. You know what I mean? You can't reach out to the next generation who doesn't want to hear what you got to say. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but fact of the matter is, it is what it is. Think about when you were young and whether if you're an advanced age, middle age, or, you're just getting into your mid-30s, wherever you're at in life, when you were a teenager, when you were in your early mid-20s, did you really want to listen to anybody, or you just wanted to walk your own path because you felt like you were bulletproof? And fortunately for a lot of us, that's the absolute truth, man. Like, a lot of us are not trying to hear what anybody's got to say because we're trying to walk our own path. And let's not mention that we don't look at life as it's finite whenever we're in our teenage years or even our early to mid-20s or even late 20s for that matter. We think that we're just going to live forever, so we just think we have this this infinite resource of time. And obviously, we're not being realistic, but it's the truth for a lot of us. So we do squander away a lot of opportunities, and we don't realize that not only are we living and making a mess, but it's just who we are at that time. So whenever you're swimming in it, you become nose blind, or you know you just learn how to ignore the situation because you've been in it for so long. But anywho, the way I look at it is we went through our own trials, and we went through our situation where we've had to figure things out. And the way I look at it, the younger generation is going to figure their stuff out too. They got to go through their own trial and error. So, you can't really target an audience that you wish you had, because at the end of the day, you have to speak to those who want to listen. And I've noticed for a lot of older entrepreneurs, they're trying to grab this young audience. And it's not because, I don't think they're doing it selfishly. I really think what it comes down to is they figure these are the people who are going to take care of us, that are going to better our tomorrow. I might as well just go ahead and give them game right now. So I totally get that. They're trying to make sure that once they're done their mission, their part of their mission is giving game to the next generation so they can carry on where they left off. So I totally get that. But I'm for real, man. For like the older entrepreneurs, the older creators, talking to the younger crowd, it's hard because you're talking to a crowd that really, they don't want to be put on game. At least not yet. You know what I mean? They want to go through their situations of living life however the hell they want to live it. Think about it. A lot of these guys and females, of course, they want to live. They're living for the weekend. They're living for 2 a.m. On a Friday, Saturday night, Sunday morning, however you want to see it. They're smoking, they're drinking, they're partying, they're having a good time. It rings true to what many people say. You spend the first 35, 40 years killing yourself, and then you spend that time after the age of 40 trying to live your best life at that point. You've done so much damage your first 30, 40 years, and then for the rest of your life, you're trying to enhance yourself, and you're trying to live the best that you can. Even those who've done great damage within those first 40 years, they're trying to survive at that point. But right now, like I said, there's a lot of people, younger folks, that don't want to hear what you got to say at this time. And, at the end of the day, when they're young, they all want to live fast, but they're learning slow. And that just, is it a cycle that we should break? Absolutely. Especially now with the advanced technology that we do have in today's age. We should all be wanting to live fast and learn even faster. However, even though we have access to this technology, you're still working with a 2 million-year-old brain that we've all been blessed with. But at the same time, like I said, it's software that hasn't really been updated throughout the course of man and the course of time. So right now, our technology is moving fast, like the life that we want to live, but we're still learning at a slow pace. And a lot of that has to do with what's been ingrained in us, throughout the beginning of time. So my thing is, not trying to sound like a jerk or anything, but like, you didn't skip your pain, so why should the younger generation? I'm a firm believer that, if you didn't go through what you went through, you wouldn't be the person you are. Point blank, period. There's a lot of guys that they always say, man, I sure wish somebody would have told me this when I was 25 years old. But my thing is, would you have listened? Probably not. Okay, you would have heard what they would have said. There's a difference between hearing and listening. Like you heard a bang, right? You heard my hand smacking the other one, right? But are you listening to the articulation of what's being said to you? Are you taking in the information? Are you processing it, and are you going to apply it? There's a big difference between hearing and listening. So if somebody would have told you something about, whether if you would have listened at the age of 25, that's like, for me, I'll be honest with you. I know sometimes I get caught up in this fantasy too of, man, I wish I would have learned this when I was like 25, 30 years old. Oh man, I wish I would have known. Man, I wish I would have known this before I graduated high school, like what these kids go through and what they have access to and how far ahead. But in actuality, with the same trial and error that I had to go through, they got to go through their own trial and error as well too. Now, do you have some anomalies that actually occur? Absolutely. I mean, you got so many folks that, unfortunately, it's a lot of folks that don't have a lot of social currency in reference to like friends, things of that nature, where they don't have those distractions where they can actually, tractor beam, laser in on whatever task that they want to achieve. They're able to achieve it because they don't have those social distractions, but that doesn't, equate for everybody, because there are many people who do have social interactions, who have a social life, who have great social currency, where those things are a distraction, and they're going to end up being in a situation where they're not going to be where they want to be right at that time because of the fact that they do have, hey, you want to go out this weekend? Hey, man, you want to go and grab a beer? Hey, man, you want to go out for some pizza? Hey, man, you want to go catch a movie? Like, hey, you want to go to the game? You want to catch a game this weekend? You're going to have those interactions. And there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, like I said, when we're all on our deathbed, nobody's saying, they're not going to say, man, I wish I made more money. I wish I would have been more. I wish, I became a great successful entrepreneur at the age of 50, and I wish I would have hit it when I was, 19, 20 years old. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, hey, man, I wish I had more moments with my people. I wish I caught that ball game with my cousins. I wish I would have hung out with my brother a little bit. I wish, I would have spent great time, with my parents. Those are the things that they're going to say, of course. But with that being said, too, people have to go through their situations before they can actually realize what's important to them in life. So, I'm not knocking the social currency and the social interaction and stuff like that. It's just, especially right now with the younger generation, they're more focused on, I guess you could say, memories and relationships as opposed to like trying to get after it. And like, dude, like the way they look at it, I mean, and I say this all the time, tomorrow's not guaranteed, but God made one day after the other. And what may be something of relevance to a 50-year-old of like, hey, man, you have to get after it and you have to go now, is because you have more Sundays behind you than you do in front of you. And a lot of these kids, they actually have way more Sundays in front of them than they do behind them, Like there's a term all the time. I remember I used to work with this older gentleman. He was just like the coolest cat, man. Very, very near and dear to me, man. You know what I mean? Like he was a great guy. I learned a lot from him. Old enough to be my dad. And he'd say, man, he used to tell me all the time. He said, man, Ro, let me tell you something. He said, I got more time in the bathroom than you got living. You know what I mean? And it was funny when he used to say it, because what he's basically saying is, man, you think you know it all, but you don't know anything, man. I got more time on this earth in the bathroom than you've been living in it. You know what I mean? So he's like, you may want to listen to what's going on. So I greatly do appreciate the things that he used to talk about. And this man would say about 15,000 crazy things in a day, but like one thing would make sense and it would stick and it would outweigh all the crazy nonsense he used to say. So, definitely have a lot of love for him. And I obviously, hope he's doing well and I wish him well. But, just those things are just absolutely true. Like, you can't take things personally as an older creator, an older entrepreneur, whoever you are, and say, hey, I want to make sure that we're having a better tomorrow. So I got to enforce and impose my will and my information on these kids so they don't have to grow up as rough as I did, or trying to go through this stuff in the business when I can give them a shortcut. Look, it's all fine and well, but like I said earlier, if your 25-year-old self took in the information that you're receiving right now, would you have listened? I don't think so. What makes us is our experiences. And when our experiences are able to be refined by our trial and error and say, hey, I was able to overcome this because I went through this, it just makes life worth living, So don't get me wrong. Like, I'm reading books, I listen to podcasts. If you can find a shortcut, it's not so much of a shortcut. I mean, you have to listen to game to get put on it. You have to read, the material and understand the content to apply it. If I can go ahead and take a shortcut in reference to, like, hey, I'm gonna read somebody's book that it took them 20 to 25 years to become a millionaire, and if that cuts my time down to 5 years by just implementation and seeing what they did wrong, and I'm able to implement their correct strategy, and I'm cutting that time down in 20 years, I'm going to go follow that. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, it's something that you have to be willing and wanting to do. And that's just what it is. You got to understand, growth comes from trial and error, heartbreak, consequences, unfortunately. That's how wisdom is gained. And it's unfortunate there's a lot of people who run into situations where they end up in a bad predicament where it could be life altering. You see stories all the time, especially, if you're on social media, you see sad stories all the time about a person who did a home invasion and they were 14, 15 years old or 11 years old, and, they killed somebody maliciously, and they ended up getting tried as an adult, and they're serving life without parole. And the guy's 43, 45, even 50 years old, has been in the pen for like almost 40 years. And he's giving you a story about who he is now, like the readings that he's done while he's been incarcerated and all the rehabilitation he's put himself through, as well as, going through the system. And he's a completely different person compared to the kid that didn't want to listen and ended up getting with his buddies and, going through that unfortunate event, which put him behind bars. But the thing is, and, the guy's totally reformed, right? But the sad thing is, we go through things and sometimes we just don't want to listen. And unfortunately, in cases like that, you wish you had an older mentor, or you wish you had somebody that could have said, hey man, let me take you under my wing and show you the way. But I'm going to be quite honest with you. Some people need that, and some people will actually, they'll turn the other way. They'll complete 180 and get themselves together. And there's a lot of people who actually have that mentorship and can actually be under the wing of a mentor and learn, and they'll reject it anyway because they want to learn on their own. And unfortunately, for many people, they end up learning on their own, and then their life is just changed forever and not the way that they wished. You're stuck in a little, 5x5 cell, and you're done at that point. You know what I mean? So it's absolutely unfortunate, and that's just worst case scenario. But I mean, I'm going there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a lot of times you have a lot of people who they just don't want to gravitate toward the right thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, dude, I'm trying to get you. I see something in you you don't see yourself. Like, whatever you don't see in yourself, I can see that in you. But at the end of the day, that person has to want to care a little bit more than you do. Because at the end of the day, it's their situation, not yours. But anywho, yeah, I was just thinking about that. But you have to really think to it, especially with a lot of these OGs out here, man. Like, are you really trying to connect with folks, or are you just trying to go viral? You know what I mean? I mean, I'm going to tell you just like this. This is the way I look at things. And I've noticed this too, especially in hip hop. I've noticed this, you know what I'm saying? And it doesn't change. Like, it's still the same thing. It's like the same Same situations, different people. Like as time has went on, the generations have went on, it's been the same recycled events. You know what I mean? You have a washed up rapper in hip hop trying to maintain relevance basically by trying to work with a hot young artist that's coming out right now. Look, I'm not trying to knock nobody, right? But it is what it is. We're going to just keep it, let's just keep it all the way 100. Like, I recall there was an artist who is famously known for getting shot 9 times. And he noticed that his relevance in music was no longer hitting anymore the way it did when he first came out. Okay? And I'm not talking about the first time he came out. I'm talking about the first time he came out after his incident and he started making his mixtapes and then he got dropped. You know, he got dropped by a label, picked up by another big label, and 2 big label heads were able to push this guy out. But you know, his run was so impactful during that time. It was very reminiscent to like Terrell Davis playing for the Denver Broncos, racked in a couple of MVPs, you know, won a couple Super Bowls, some rushing titles, and they were questioning whether or not if he belonged in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which was crazy, but that's kind of like how this guy's run was in hip hop. And it was very impactful in a short period of time. And around 07, 08, I remember like his body of work was great and excellent during that time, but his musicality side was really falling off. So what did he do? He got with a younger viral sensation from the internet, okay, who I think he's from Mississippi or something, but of course he was claiming Atlanta because he blew up here in Atlanta. But anyway, but you guys know he had everybody Superman and everything, right? So it was funny, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. I mean, it is what it is. But, you know, he was like killing it on the internet, you know what I'm saying? So what did Buddy do? He went ahead and was like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and get with him so then that way we can go ahead and put out a single together. And I think they put out a single, I think it was called Mean Mug or something like that. Like, to me, it didn't hit because I'm like, dude, whatever. Like, that was like the transformational change of hip hop going into where it's at right now. But basically what I'm trying to say is, you know, that's what, you know, people try to do whenever they lose relevancy. And you don't want to be one of those people because you're like, okay, I'm an older, you know, content creator and I'm trying to put game on people. And it's like you hope somebody gravitates toward it who's young and then who can kind of revive you as well. And I hate to just use that as an example. Like, that's not really what I was trying to do. Like, just trying to like throw shade on anybody. But you see plenty of people do that. I mean, people do that in the personal development space all the time where they're no longer relevant. And you know, I'm going to talk about another big wig. And you guys know who I'm talking about. You know, he's got these guys, huge hands, everything, man. The guy's, you know, big as hell, has been doing it for I don't know how long. I guess he wants to say 48 or 49 years or whatever. And he's went to 159 different countries. I mean, the guy he drops it all the time. Dude, it is what it is. Like, I'm not knocking him, right? But he does it all the time, too. So his thing is that he's losing his luster in the personal development game. So what's he doing? He's grabbing hold of people who are actually getting eyeballs on them, and then he's gravitating toward them as well. So then that way he can maintain relevance, right? And what I'm saying is his message isn't bad. He has a great message, you know. But what's happening is when you start talking to a younger audience and they can't relate to you because you like you pops or you unk or you know what I'm saying, like, because you know that's what they call them. They call the older guys now unk and, you know, that's pops and whatever it is, you know what I'm saying, like they're talking like that now. So it's like they can no longer relate to you. So what do these guys end up doing? They try to get to a younger person in that space who's actually got eyeballs on them, so then that way they can maintain relevance on their end. But at the end of the day, they're just not hearing you. You know what I'm saying? So like for the OGs who's trying to put, put the 20 somethings on game, maybe you just may have to, talk to the 35 plus crowd. You know what I'm saying? People that are ready to make a pivot in their life and they're making a course correction. Like, okay, like, man, I've been going this long doing this, it's not working. And a lot of times whenever you're in your early 20s, up to your mid-30s, even in your 40s, you're like, I'm still trying to figure this out, but you know you want the course correction to go where you're ascending and not descending. Because at the end of the day, we think we're ascending in the beginning of life, when in actuality, we're at ascension and we're going on a nosedive, crash, and burn. You know what I mean? So we don't actually course correct until we start figuring it out, like, damn, I really am not ascending. I've been going on a nosedive, you know, right out the womb, you know. But it doesn't mean that you can't change your course. You know, unfortunately for some people, they think there's no need for course correction at all, and they think everything's fine. Like I always say all the time, you'll never address a problem if you don't think one exists. So it is what it is, man. But there's a power in owning where you're at and speaking to people that are on the same path. You know what I mean? That you're parallel to one another. So if I'm talking now, and people chime in like, hey, man, like, I totally get that. Like, I can resonate with your message because that's the way I feel about a lot of these, you know, a lot of these older guys. These guys our age, like, we're trying to reach a generation that doesn't want to hear you at this time. So, I mean, I'm not saying, like, it bothers me, but it does kind of irritate a little bit because I think what we're doing is when we're focusing too much on something that we can't reach, we're forgetting those who actually want to hear us and that need our help, but because they don't fit into the demographic that we want, whether if it's like, you know, a certain age group or, you know, a certain socioeconomic type where it's like, oh, you know, if you're not in the middle class trying to be the 1% or, you know, no, man, maybe we just need to talk to some people that are trying to raise above the poverty line, you know, that are trying to get more, you know, talk to everybody, not just one class of person, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, talk to those who want to listen, you know, because you could try to talk to everybody, but if they're not willing to listen, that is what it is. But anyway, you got to remember, you're not the hero in someone else's journey. And that's what a lot of these guys are trying to take credit for. You know, you get with a guy, you know, you're in your 50-somethings, you know, and you're taking TRT and all this crap, which I think is cheating anyway, if you ask me. But, you know, that's my opinion. You know, other people are, oh, TRT is not cheating. It's like TRT is not steroids. Do you call it what you want? Whatever, right? And you got somebody and you got him in a little headlock. It's like, yeah, you know, this is my little 23-year-old protege. Like, yeah, you know, I went ahead, I set him up for success. You know, he did all the work, but I gave him the blueprint. Like you do, you're still trying to take credit for somebody else's hard work. You know, at the end of the day, I'm not here to take credit for anybody else's hard work. At the end of the day, I can give you information, but you're the one that's got to follow through the blueprint and go ahead and execute on your dream, not me. You know, so you got to stop trying to do that. And you have to look at yourself as a lighthouse. You have to be a beacon of light. At the end of the day, I'm not here to make you walk the path, but I'm here to let you know, hey, we're here. Come follow this way, man, and get to where you need to go. You know what I mean? Say your piece and respect the journey of others. That's it, man. That's all you can do. But anyway, I know I have rambled enough, but this is so true, man. So at the end of the day, I get it, man. You're an older content creator, entrepreneur, whatever space you're in, man. You know, like, I know you want to see a better tomorrow, but it's not going to happen to people who aren't going to listen to you. They're not going to listen to you. Leave it alone. Right? Whoever needs to hear it, they'll hear it, they'll follow, and they'll apply. And I'm not trying to target anybody or knock anybody's hustle, man. You do you, I'm going to do me. This is just is what it is. You know what I mean? But I just want to see everybody succeed. I want to see everybody get after it every day. Like, life ain't easy. You know, people are so scared of death. But death is easy, man. Because once you're gone, you're gone. There ain't no more work to it. You know what I mean? But this life is hard. And while you're here, you need to put in the work. And if you're not willing to work, well, you're just looking to fail. Well, anyway, that's my time for this week, man. But look, y'all take care. Godspeed. You guys already know what it is. Feel free to hit me up on the socials. Again, you guys already know. I'm not going to repeat it. So, but always remember, baby, Be the goat, never a sheep, and don't sleep on your dreams. Y'all take care. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.